Tay. Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Mr. Kim said, keeping the newspaper down. Tay's mouth watered after seeing his favorite dishes on the dining table. Tay smiled, slurping a spoon of his favorite seaweed soup. He hummed at the taste because it was so delicious. Tay. Nancy, come here. Nancy, a middle aged woman, came bowing in front of Tay. Yes, Mr. Taehyung. Nancy smiled. Tay. Nancy, how many times I've told you not to call me Mr. Taehyung? I don't like this formality. Just call me Tay. Okay, Tay, Nancy said, earning a glance from Mr. Kim. Nancy, this seaweed soup is amazing, I must tell you. Did you change your usual recipe of making this seaweed soup? Tay smiled, slurping another spoon of seaweed soup. I didn't make this soup. It was made by the new maid Joan Somi. Nancy smiled. Really? Call her Nancy. I want to praise her cooking skills. It is awesome. Nancy nodded her head, calling for Joan Somi. Tay saw a middle aged woman walking inside the dining room. She smiled, bowing in front of him. Tay, your seaweed soup is amazing, Mrs. Joan. Tay smiled, pulling his hand back after shaking her hand. Tay noticed his father gesturing him to sanitize his hand. Tay rolled his eyes, sanitizing his hand under the table, not wanting to break Mrs. Jones' heart. I know to make other kinds of soups as well, Mr. Taehyung. If you want, I can make them for you. Mrs. John smiled. Oh, that would be awesome, Mrs. John. I'll wait for it. And please call me Tay. I'm like your son. Tay smiled and Mrs. John nodded her head. And Somi, do you live in the maid quarters alone or you have someone living with you? And tell us about yourself, Mr. Kim asked, eating another spoon of his cereal. I live in the maid quarters with my son Jungkook. We came to Daegu from Busan, and my son is outside right now. I'll call him if you want, Master Kim Taejung, Mrs. Jones said, taking a small button phone out of her pocket, and Mr. Kim nodded his head, saying okay. Jungkook, son, come inside the mansion, in the dining room, okay? Come fast. Mrs. Jones smiled, keeping her phone back on her pocket. Tay smiled as he noticed a handsome boy of his age coming inside the mansion. The boy had bunny-like features, with big eyes, a small button nose, and full lips. He was also quite cute, with a shy demeanor. Tay could tell that the boy was nervous, because he didn't dare to look in the eyes of Kim's. This is my son John Jungkook, going to study in Bangtan High School from tomorrow. Mrs. Jones smiled, patting Jungkook's back. Tay smiled at the mention of his high school's name. Mr. Kim frowned hearing that because that high school only gave admission to selected elite people, and even Mr. Taejung had to give many bribes to that school to get Tae's admission there. How did Jungkook got admission there? Mr. Kim asked, wiping his lip with the tissue paper. Mrs. Jones smiled, looking at her son with proud eyes. Bangtan High gives scholarship to only one extremely bright student every year, and this year Jungkook got scholarship. And the principal said my son got this scholarship because of his talent and intelligence. Mrs. Jones smiled, kissing her son's forehead, making Tay smile at the mother-son duo. He was kind of missing his mother at that moment. What about your husband, Somi? Tay noticed Jungkook visibly stiffening his body, and Mrs. Jones' smile changed into a frown. Mrs. Jones. I divorced him. Jungkook clenched his fist, looking away. Oh, what happened? Tay. Jungkook, what are your future plans? I mean, what do you want to do in your life? Tay said, interrupting his dad, not wanting to make the Joan family more uncomfortable. Jungkook heard an unfamiliar voice of someone. So he looked at him. Jungkook swore he saw an angel on earth. Jungkook's heart started to beat fast when he noticed that angel smiling adorably at him. The boy had big expressive eyes, a small button nose, and full lips. Jungkook? Jungkook blinked and looked around confused. He had been so lost in his beauty that he didn't realize that Taehyung called his name. Jungkook? I wanted to become a businessman since my childhood. It is my dream to own a chain of companies one day. I want to become like Mr. Kim one day. Jungkook said, flashing his bunny smile. Mr. Kim chuckled humorlessly, making Jungkook's smile vanish. Of course, Jungkook, you will achieve your dream one day. And if you want any help, you can ask my dad. Since he's a businessman too, he can help you in this field. I'm going to be a businessman as well. We both will achieve our dream one day. Fighting. Tae smiled, showing his face, making Jungkook's heart melt. JK, thank you. Jungkook smiled. Mrs. John, we may take our leave, Mr. Kim, and thank you, Tae, for your sweet words. Mrs. John smiled, going out with her son. Jungkook looked back at the mansion one last time, taking in the sight of Tae slurping his soup with a smile. He felt his heart flutter in his chest. He had never met someone so beautiful, both inside and out. Jungkook sighed and turned away from the mansion. He walked away, his heart full of hope and fear. Why did you say to that boy to get my help in business field? Mr. Kim asked, and Tae rolled his eyes internally. Dad, it is called helping gesture. You won't understand. You're just reducing your chances by giving chances to poor people. Mr. Kim rolled his eyes. Tae, what do you mean, Dad? Those poor people were born to serve elite people like us. We rich people should treat them as servants, not as business partners. Mr. Jones laughed, eating his dessert. Youngjae, why are you not playing with us, Tae? You guys play, I'll just sit there and watch your match. Okay then, cheer for me, baby. Soon the soccer match got started and Tae started to cheer for his cousin. Youngjae gave a flying kiss to Tae at his every goal, and Tae just laughed thinking that his cousin is crazy. Soon Tae got bored over the match. He took out his phone watching TikTok videos of cute animals. Youngjae kicked the ball and it got hit on someone who was watering the plants. He turned back and it was Jungkook. Dude, pass me that ball, Youngjae said, and Jungkook glared at him because Youngjae didn't even bother to say sorry to him. Can't you hear? Are you deaf? Youngjae started to laugh, making Jungkook more angry. Tae puts his phone back on his pocket, looking at the ruckus standing up from the bench. Leave it, dude, Youngjae's friend Bam Bam said, trying to cool down the situation. Yes, you're correct. Let's leave it because how maid's son can know how to play soccer, Youngjae said with a smirk. Suddenly, Yeonjae's smirk dropped when the ball flew over his head, hitting the goal post. He saw Jungkook smirking at him. Tae laughed, clapping his hands, and it went unnoticed by them because Tae was standing a little far away from them. Hey, what's your name? Yugyeom asked, looking at him with an amused expression. Jungkook Jeon, Jungkook said as they both shook their hands. I'm Yugyeom, this team's captain, and Yeonjae's elder brother. And this is Bam Bam, Jackson, Mark, Jinyoung, and JB are my friends. And the boy over there is Tae, my cousin. Hey, why don't you play with us today? Bam Bam asked, and all agreed to him except a jealous Yeonjae. No, actually I have errands to run, and Mr. Kim would get mad if I don't water the plants. Jungkook smiled, scratching his nape. Dude, just play with us. Only for 5 minutes, Jackson said, hitting Jungkook's back playfully. And Jungkook smiled, shaking his head, saying no. Just 5 minutes, dude. I'll convince Uncle Kim. This time, Mark asked. No, dude, I need to water the plants. Jungkook smiled apologetically. I'll convince my father. You can play with them, Jungkook. Jungkook nodded his head, instantly agreeing to Tae, making him clap his hands in excitement. Jungkook smiled, jogging towards the main ground. Jungkook played soccer like a professional, making clear goals for his team and dodging Yeonjae's pushes with ease. He won the game for his team, scoring countless goals. Yugyeom ran towards him and gave him a high five. Everyone watched Jungkook in awe, amazed by his skill and talent. Jungkook's teammates cheered and gathered around him, congratulating him on his victory. You play like a professional, Yugyeom said, giving a fist bump to Jungkook, and Jungkook smiled at him. I would gladly make you join our soccer team if I lived here, Yugyeom said, and Jungkook looked at him feeling confused. What do you mean? Jungkook asked. I live in Gwangju with my friends and family. We came Daegu to spend vacation with my cousin, and sadly, our vacation is ending tomorrow, and we'll go back to Gwangju, Yugyeom said with a sigh. Oh, I get it, Yugyeom. Jungkook nodded his head. Jungkook was about to go, but he stopped when he heard a voice calling for him. Tae, Jungkook, you played well. I'm impressed. Jungkook was about to hold Tae's hand, but Youngjae dragged him inside the mansion. Tae turned his head towards Jungkook and mumbled sorry with a cute pout. Jungkook watched as Youngjae dragged him away, feeling a pang of disappointment. He had wanted to hold Tae's hand, but Youngjae had ruined the moment.